did Adam really name every animal? Wouldn't that, where am I at? Wouldn't that take months and months to name them all?
There is actually a study that was done by a guy where he went through and talked about naming the animals and talked about everything that God had done and gave it an hour by hour, set it up hour by hour so that you could know that it could all happen in the sixth day. First off, Troy, my bookkeeper, is calling me.
Hey, Troy.
She doesn't know that I'm on Facebook right now. You guys should, anybody that knows Troy, you should Facebook her right now and say, stop interrupting the Q&A session, please. What were we talking about?
There was a study done on Adam with naming the animals.
Yeah, so it goes through an hour by hour, does this stuff. One of the mistakes that you're making is you're thinking that all the animals that we have on the planet are all the animals that need to be named, and that was not the case at the very beginning. So, for example, when you're looking at dogs, how many breeds of dogs are there? And that's not how they started. All the dogs started from a wolf-like creature, probably from wolves. And so the only dogs that you had on the planet were wolves, and that's what they were called. They were called wolves, whatever the Hebrew corollary is to that. And when you're talking about big cats, you know that tigers and lions, for example, can interbreed. And you can actually get something that's called a liger. And so obviously they came from the same type of animal, and so you didn't have tigers and lions at the very beginning. You had an animal that branched off over time. And you have that with most of the animals on the planet. The other thing that you have in the passage specifically is that it doesn't say that Adam went out and named all the animals. It says in verse 19, it says, out of the ground the Lord God had formed every beast of the field and every bird of the air and brought them to Adam to see what he would call them. And whatever Adam called each living creature, that was its name. And so what you're talking about here in the passage are beasts of the fields and birds of the air. It doesn't say the creeping things. When you're looking back in Genesis chapter 1, it talks about the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. It also doesn't talk about everything that was in the oceans. And so again, when you're looking at the list of names that there would have to be, right now, there are only about 1 million species on the earth. And the species aren't the kinds that the Bible is talking about. The species, again, lions and tigers are different species, and they would come from the same animal. Dogs and wolves are different species, and they would come from the same animal. Horses, donkeys, mules, zebras, all of those animals they're different species, but they come from the same type of animal. And so you don't have the large amount of animals large distinction of animals that we have nowadays. And then on top of it, you only have certain animals that Adam's naming, the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth. One of the things that's kind of cool about that whole thing is how radical Adam's mind had to have been.
Right.
To be able to do that. Because even if you're talking about a few hundred or a few thousand, and naming a few thousand animals, God's parading them in front of him. And so, I can't, donkey, lion, cow, how long does it have to say that? How long does it take to say that? And you can do that easily within a few hours, even with thousands of animals. And so I don't think that there's a problem with that.
Yeah, when I toured Europe, when we took our cruise, Walk Where Paul Walked, it was amazing to see what they were able to build back then. And you see that we were moving down, the evolutionary chain in that sense, as far as smarts go and stuff like that, because they were building buildings that we don't even know how to build now.
Yeah.
They had concrete, we don't have the recipe to.
Right,
and things like that. And so you could tell.
You guys, Roman concrete has lasted for thousands of years.
Yeah.
That is not what happens with our concrete. I was a contractor.
And they were doing it by hand. They didn't have big old cats out there doing stuff, and they were able to build these amazing feats. So you go all the way back to Adam.
Yeah.
He must have had it.
That guy was a genius.
Yeah.
And so he had no writing implements, and yet he's naming all the animals and remembering the names.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's pretty wild. So again, I don't think that there was a big problem with that. You're not talking about all the animals on the earth, and then you're not even talking about all the different species that we have. It would have been, this is the start, and everything speciated off these.